Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Sorry I'm not so enthusiastic. I just came home from a group study meeting for church, and I found that somebody wrecked into my car. And I don't have my ring cam, and my neighbors don't either, so I'm not going to be able to find whoever wrecked into my little Impala. So I'm going to have to figure out how to fix that thing and get it rolling, because it's been sitting on the street for long enough. Needless to say, I don't feel exactly 100% awesome like I did before when I left where I was. So what do I want to talk about today? You know, Kamala Harris finally released her political stance, or her politics, what she's wanting to do, the initiative she's going for. And it's kind of scary as hell from the 2A perspective. Because she's actually calling for a ban on assault rifles, so-called assault rifles. I mean, anybody can perpetrate an assault with any type of thing and use it as a weapon, so therefore I don't really consider those weapons, like an assault weapon. They're a modern sporting rifle. There is such a thing in the 2A world that an assault weapon does exist, or assault rifle does exist. It's actually, it has to have this giggle switch, has to be of military use to be an assault rifle, and the left has co-opted that. What does she have in what she wants to do for the next 4 years if she's elected? Well, red flag laws galore. So she, and just like everyone else on the left likes to think, and they've never been to a gun show, so that this bears truth, is that they think that there's some sort of gun show loophole. And if you've been to a gun show in the last 5 years at least, you've seen that there is no such thing as a gun show loophole. You're going to get a background check at a gun show, period. Unless you found a way to talk to someone. Especially in New Mexico. New Mexico, it's illegal if you don't go through a background check, even through private sales. So they're wanting that. They're wanting red flag laws. So if you don't know what that is, basically you can have an ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, say that you're unstable and that you need, or a family member, or someone who is not even your family member, can come forward and say you're being obnoxious, or that you've threatened to kill people for whatever reason or not, and then they'll come and take your guns and take your rights away. Now, there's some problems with this, because they're basically supplanting or going around your due process with red flag laws. There is a lot to be said about this, and it sounds great on paper, and even 2A advocates, myself included, were fooled by this initially, thinking that maybe this would help people, help the world, especially against all these mass shootings that happen. And that's not the case. She also wants to pack the courts. So the Supreme Court, that's been heavily weighing in on our side lately, she wants to get rid of them, term limit them out, or just outright get rid of them one way or another politically. This is a big problem. I have a hard time talking about politics lately, because I realize that most people live in echo chambers, including myself, that we're just hearing the same regurgitated nonsense over and over again. And neither one of these two candidates scream that I should be voting for either of them. If anything, I actually would think about habitual line crosser, HLC, Buff Franklin ticket. But I'm still going to vote, because, that's what I do. And that's what Americans should do, is make their voice known, at least down ticket, if not for this particular issue. In other news, the FBI knew about the shooter that happened in Georgia, in Appalachia High School. He had made some threats like this before. And if you look at his home life was really, really bad. And this seems to be kind of indicative of something that keeps being a reoccurring theme, is that law enforcement is well aware of what's going on with these individuals, but they have they're not taking initiative to do something about it. In this particular shooter's case, he probably should have been put into a home a long time ago. I mean, like CYFD, so Children, Youth, and Families Department here in New Mexico, should have interceded if it was in New Mexico and Georgia. I imagine they have something very close to that. someone should have interceded and said, taken him out of his family life because his dad was overly abusive. His mother was a drug addict who had had several strings of run-ins with the law. It's not the greatest environment to raise a teenage son, and he did the most unthinkable thing possible. I think about this a lot because I still have an 18-year-old now. His birthday was Saturday. And I thought about this like my dad probably did, about how do you introduce your kids to the 2A, especially in today's society, where this is a more and more common problem of them going and using one of your weapons and doing something. And you can restrict your weapons access to your kids. That actually makes a lot of sense. It also makes a lot of sense in our environment in the Southwest that a kid actually still has access to a weapon because there's bad stuff that happens here all the time. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. Now, that said, I think it goes to what you talk to your kids about. You should know by conversations you've had with your kids, and you should be actively in their life enough to know what kind of character and individual they are. Now, I know that there's a parental bias where you think absolutely none of this stuff could happen because you're a better parent than that. But you need to, test your kids. And what I mean by that is I remember my dad, before all this stuff was ever a thing. When I say all this stuff, I mean all these mass shootings in schools. He tested me. Now, I had a Kalashnikov when I was 16. Okay? But I remember my dad asking me if I would come home if I got bullied by one person too many, and if I would come home and grab a weapon and go back and take care of this person instead of just taking the fight to him physically, like with fists, and if I would go after more than just him. And I remember telling my dad, saying that if I'm not man enough to take the butt whooping that's coming to me, it's not worth doing the other stuff for. And those other types of actions are reserved for ultimate acts of self-defense, meaning that it's for your God, country, your family, something like that. Now, I don't understand kids nowadays intertwining all those into one thing to where they think that their way of life is the absolute best way of life, period, and that there isn't other people in this planet Earth that, deserve to live. And I think that's the big difference nowadays is people have, kids especially nowadays, have gotten so self-absorbed that they don't think of the world in any other way than just themselves. And that's where it comes, where I'm telling you the best medicine for this, especially with kids, is talking to them. If you know they're having issues at school or issues in other parts of their life, you should be the parent that gets in there and talks to them and gets stuff squared away. Get them help they need. Be the help they need. There's a lot of preventative measures here you can do as a parent. And when it gets too much to where you can't even deal with it, that's when you need to start involving really big professionals, up to and including law enforcement, if you feel that it's an imminent threat. And I think if society would do that more often, instead of closing their eyes and looking down at the pavement and walking away instead of doing something about something, well, that's not my problem. That's somebody else's family. It absolutely is your problem. After 9/11, they started saying, see something, do something, or see something, say something, and we've rapidly stopped that. Now, I'm not telling you to be a snitch, but there's a difference. Know when it's time to say something or do something. Because if you don't nowadays, there's some lethal repercussions from happening. It wasn't too long ago that a very young gentleman went and shot at the president. It begs the question, did the parents know this young man was having some issues, and they never bothered to check off anything there? More and more is coming out, but more and more still being hidden about that shooter. And we're finding more and more about the trans shooter that went to Tennessee and actually had a real axe to grind, or a hard axe in their mind to go grind and kill people because they felt the society had failed them and failed everything about them and that wouldn't accept them, so screw society and kill it all. That's not the right mentality to have, ever. So if you're in that type of thing, you probably need to go talk to some people, or you need to start thinking about some other things. I have this weird attachment to society where I think about it in terms of if it was my brother or my sister or myself or, my dad or my mom, how would I want them to be treated? So I treat society the best way I can. And I fail at that even because I'm, a human being and I have my own biases and I have my own things I'm working through. That sometimes I'm not the most kind and gentle person. I'm working on that. But that's what society needs to do, is we need that kinder, gentler society where we actually talk to people and figure out what each other's issues are. Otherwise, we're going to keep seeing this stuff. That's pretty much all I had for you tonight, was just talking about what's going on in the political spectrum, especially in the presidential race, because now that they've put their election ideals forward, which is no surprise being from the Democrat that they want to ban everything and go hard against the 2A. But you should be well aware of that. Trump is no angel. Remember, we've been fighting these battles in court and winning against the ATF that was given those powers by Trump. So be forever vigilant with the 2A. Like, share, subscribe, most importantly,